The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to John.
Glory to you.
As Jesus passed by, he saw a man blind from birth. His disciples asked him, "Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?" Jesus answered, "Neither he nor his parents sinned. It is so that the works of God might be made visible through him. We have to do the works of the one who sent me while it is day. Night is coming when no one can work. While I am in the world, I am the light of the world." When he had said this, he spat on the ground and made clay with the saliva and smeared the clay on his eyes and said to him, "Go wash in the pool of Siloam," which means sent. So he went and washed and came back able to see. His neighbors and those who had seen him earlier as a beggar said, "Isn't this the one who used to sit and beg?" Some said, "It is." But others said, "No, he just looks like him." He said, "I am." So they said to him, "How were your eyes opened?" He replied, "The man called Jesus made clay and anointed my eyes and told me, 'Go to Siloam and wash.' So I went there and washed and was able to see." And they said to him, "Where is he?" He said, "I don't know." They brought the one who was once blind to the Pharisees. Now Jesus had made clay and opened his eyes on a Sabbath. So then the Pharisees also asked him how he was able to see. He said to them, "He put clay on my eyes and I washed and now I can see." So some of the Pharisees said, "This man is not from God because he does not keep the Sabbath." But others said, "How can a sinful man do such signs?" And there was a division among them. So they said to the blind man again, "What do you have to say about him since he opened your eyes?" He said, "He is a prophet." Now the Jews did not believe that he had been blind and gained his sight until they summoned the parents of the one who had gained his sight. They asked them, "Is this your son who you say was born blind? How does he now see?" His parents answered and said, "We know that this is our son and that he was born blind. We do not know how he sees now, nor do we know who opened his eyes. Ask him, he is of age. He can speak for himself." His parents said this because they were afraid of the Jews, for the Jews had already agreed that if anyone acknowledged him as the Christ, he would be expelled from the synagogue. For this reason, his parents said, "He is of age, question him." So a second time they called the man who had been blind and said to him, "Give God the praise. We know that this man is a sinner." He replied, "If he is a sinner, I do not know. One thing I do know is that I was blind, and now I see." So they said to him, "What did he do to you? How did he open your eyes?" He answered them, "I told you already, and you did not listen. Why do you want to hear it again? Do you want to become his disciples too?" They ridiculed him and said, "You are that man's disciple. We are disciples of Moses. We know that God spoke to Moses, but we do not know where this one is from." The man answered and said to them, "This is what is so amazing, that you do not know where he is from, yet he opened my eyes. We know that God does not listen to sinners, but if one is devout and does his will, he listens to him. It is unheard of that anyone ever opened the eyes of a person born blind. If this man were not from God, he would not be able to do anything." They answered and said to him, "You were born totally in sin, and you are trying to teach us?" Then they threw him out. When Jesus heard that they had thrown him out, he found him and said, "Do you believe in the Son of Man?" He answered and said, "Who is he, sir, that I may believe in him?" Jesus said to him, "You have seen him. The one speaking with you is he." He said, "I do believe, Lord," and he worshiped him. Then Jesus said, I came into this world for judgment, so that those who do not see might see, and those who do see might become blind." Some of the Pharisees who were with him heard this and said to him, "Surely we are not also blind, are we?" Jesus said to them, "If you were blind, you would have no sin. But now you are saying, 'We see,' so your sin remains." The Gospel of the Lord. I don't know if you see it or not yet, but winter is really almost over. The snow is already melting outside. It's getting light now, late into the evening. Spring training has already begun. The opening day for baseball season is less than 2 weeks away. In fact, the baseball season on the college level has already begun. And the other day I was watching a video of a college baseball game where the home team was down by just a single run. It was the bottom of the ninth inning. They were down to their last out. There was a runner on base. Could they come back and win? The first pitch was delivered right down the middle, strike one. Second pitch was delivered. Now, admittedly, I was looking on my little phone, so it was a little bit hard to see it from my couch, but it looked to me like the second pitch was a ball. It was a little bit low and outside, borderline, but I think definitely a ball. And yet the umpire put his hand out and he said, "Strike two." Well, the batter was not happy at this call, and he began to hop up and down all around home plate. He turned around to the umpire and put his finger out, and he said, "What, are you blind?" Well, the umpire was not happy that the batter had this demonstration and was trying to show him up. And so I think everyone in the stadium knew what was coming next. The third pitch came in. It must have been 5 feet off the plate. The catcher had to lunge for the ball. I mean, it was nowhere near the strike zone. "Strike three," the umpire said, and the game was over. Now, was that umpire really blind? Maybe on the second pitch, I don't know. But on that third pitch, no, he knew exactly where the ball was. It wasn't anywhere near the strike zone. But he was just upset at that batter who was so no matter where the pitch was, he was going to be calling a strike. Maybe we could say he was willfully blind in that moment. That's kind of what's going on in the gospel story today. Jesus is performing one of his greatest miracles. It is unheard of that anyone ever cured a man born blind. And yet everyone in the story seems to be blind to what is going on, this great work of God, or maybe they don't want to see what's going on. You know, we can see it from the eyes of faith. We have the eyes of faith. And so we read the story and we say, wow, what a wonderful miracle. You know, faith is a type of seeing. Faith gives us the ability to see beneath all of the ordinary, everyday circumstances in our life, all the physical events that go on, to see the deeper spiritual meaning, the spiritual reality that underlies all those events. So we look at this story and we say, oh, wow, what a miracle. I mean, this is just amazing. Jesus is recreating this man right in front of us. Just like God in the book of Genesis, he reached down and grabbed a hold of the dust of the earth and he breathed into it the breath of life and created that first man, Adam. So here Jesus is reaching down to the dust of the earth and he spits in it. And he makes clay and smears it on the man's eyes. He is literally recreating the man's eyes. And then he says, go and wash it off in the pool of Siloam. Like all of Jesus' miracles, especially in John's gospel, they point to a deeper miracle. A miracle that we all experience because all of us have gone into a pool of water. When? At baptism. We have gone into that same pool. We who were born in sin, we who were born blind, we were born in original sin, and yet we meet Jesus, we go into that pool, and when we come out of the waters, we are washed clean. We are transformed. We have new eyes of faith to be able to see, and we have God's love dwelling within us. That's what happens to this man. He is so totally transformed by this experience of going into the water and coming out again that when he comes out, people aren't even sure it's the same man. They say, well, it kind of looks like him. We think it's him. Even his parents say, we think that's our son. He's so different. He looks different. Maybe because whatever transformation was going on within him, it was exhibiting itself physically. Maybe he had a big smile on his face. His face looked different. Something was going on. He has to reassure people, look, I am that same man, he says. And, those two little words, I am, those are loaded words in the gospel because those are the divine words. That's the divine name. I am who am, God said from the burning bush. Usually in the gospels, only Jesus says those words, I am. He says it earlier, I am the light of the world. Now here's a blind man saying, I am. What he's showing us is that he and we in baptism become another Jesus. We have God's own life living within us, transforming us from the inside out. This blind man seems to know exactly what is going on. And the supreme irony of this story is that other than Jesus, the blind man is the only one who does seem to see what is going on here. In fact, his vision gets better and better throughout the story. At first, he's not even sure who healed him. He couldn't see clearly. And then he realizes, it's the man Jesus that everyone's talking about. And then he realizes, maybe that Jesus is more than just some man. Maybe he's a prophet, someone really special. And then at the end of the story, he's falling down and he's worshiping Jesus because he recognizes who Jesus is. He has the eyes of faith to see now. And when we have the eyes of faith given to us in baptism, that's when we see clearly who Jesus is and who we are in Jesus. And so it's really a beautiful story, and we see it. And the irony, though, is that it's everyone else in the story that's not able to see what's going on. Or maybe they don't want to see what's going on. There's this whole debate that breaks out about every single point in this story. There's argument. That's why the gospel today is so long. There's all these arguments, all these controversies. They say, well, maybe he wasn't really blind. Maybe he was just faking it. Okay, and they say, well, maybe he was blind, but maybe he wasn't born blind. Let's bring his parents in. Okay, well, maybe he was born blind, but maybe it wasn't really Jesus who healed him. Give God the praise. Maybe God just healed him directly. Okay, well, maybe Jesus did heal him, but maybe he shouldn't have done that. He was healing on a Sabbath. Maybe that was something bad to do. And on and on and on. Endless controversies, endless arguments, just like today. All distracting everyone from what is actually going on right in front of them. The great work of God in Jesus Christ. And so finally, they bring the man to the Pharisees. And they say, we need an umpire here, okay? We're not sure what's going on. Is this man telling the truth or not? Is Jesus who he says he is or not? We need someone to give us an official decision. Let's go to the Pharisees. And they can determine. They can call the balls and strikes here. And it's interesting that they go to the Pharisees because the Pharisees were not priests. The Pharisees were not government officials. They didn't wear an official uniform. The Pharisees were really just these self-appointed umpires of the day, people who studied the law, and they tried to make judgments about different situations. They involved themselves in pretty much every controversy. But what they would normally do is they would judge situations kind of at arm's length. They would stay on the couch and not really get too involved. They would just make a judgment from afar. I bet those Pharisees never once spoke to this blind man all the years he was begging. And now they're making a judgment about this man's life. And, sometimes people like that, they don't judge, they don't see enough to be able to judge. They think they're seeing something, but they don't see what they don't see. God bless umpires who get out there, and they have a very difficult job. Everyone's watching the same thing they are. We have instant replay now, and God bless an umpire who just does his best. Everyone's going to make mistakes. You got to call them as you see them. But sometimes umpires, they're just bad. You've probably been to some games where the umpires are just bad. It always seems to happen to the Red Sox, no one else. It reminds me a little bit of the time that the devil challenge God to a baseball game. And God laughed and he said, come on, how are you going to win a baseball game against all of us up here in heaven? We have all the best players up here. Babe Ruth, Mickey Mantle, Ted Williams, they're all up here in heaven. But the devil snickered and he said, yes, but we have all the umpires down here. You know, that umpire in the college game, he was just bad because he wanted to be bad. He was upset at that player who was showing him up. And so it didn't matter the ball was 5 feet outside. He called it a strike. In fact, the call was so egregious that actually the conference has now indefinitely suspended that umpire. In fact, they are even thinking about maybe we need to replay the end of the game. It was just so ridiculous, so unfair. And that umpire, he can't umpire again until he gets some new eyesight or maybe more importantly, a new heart, a heart full of fairness, a heart full of justice, a heart full of mercy. We get why he was upset, but come on. And you know, that's what the Pharisees were doing. They were just mad at Jesus. They were mad that he was showing them up. He was showing everyone how bad they were at umpiring, how blind they were. They couldn't see. And so they just got upset at Jesus. And you know, those Pharisees, they had the biggest strike zone that you could possibly imagine. If something was anywhere near being a strike, they called it a strike. If anything was even near a sin, they called it a sin. Who sinned? This man or his parents that he was born blind? Even Jesus, they were calling a sin. He must be a sinner. He's curing on the Sabbath. I mean, come on. Even this is a great miracle that should be celebrated. This is something 5 feet off the plate, and you're still calling it a strike. They can't see it. And so they just keep pushing and pushing and pushing against Jesus. They call strike after strike until they finally declare him out. They get Jesus arrested and killed on the cross. And it looks like the game is over. But Jesus has the last laugh. And in the end, he pulls out a great victory in the resurrection. And after the resurrection, he sends out his disciples. Siloam means sent. And when we go into the waters of baptism, we are always sent on a mission. And the disciples of Jesus are sent out. And Jesus says to them, look, we're going to suspend those Pharisees indefinitely. They've proven they're not very good judges. You have to judge now. You have to call the balls and strikes. You have to determine what's right and wrong. And whoever sins you forgive are forgiven them. And whoever sins you hold bound, they're held bound. When we go to the sacrament of reconciliation, when we go to confession, as hopefully we will during Lent, you know, that's what we're doing. We're bringing before the disciples of Jesus and their successors our thoughts, our words, our actions, our omissions, and we're asking for an official judgment. Or actually, really what we're doing is we're being self-appointed umpires. We're supposed to call balls and strikes on ourselves. And if you go to confession, you know, don't be too hard on yourself. If something's really a ball, don't call it a strike. But don't be too easy on yourself either. If something's really a strike, don't call it a ball. Just be fair. Study the rule book. And make a call. Examine your conscience. Do your best. Confess your sins. And then if we do that in honesty and fairness, something amazing happens. We discover that the ultimate judge, the great umpire, is actually someone who is on our side. He is for us. He's not against us. He's on our team. He knows we sin. He knows we're weak. He knows we've been born into sin. We're born blind. That's why he comes and he heals us. And in the sacrament of reconciliation, he restores to us that beauty of soul, that baptismal grace that we first had when we came out of the pool of water. You know, sometimes we're harder on ourselves and harder on others than even Jesus is. Jesus is actually not hard. He has a heart full of mercy. He has a heart full of justice. He has a heart full of fairness. He wants us to win the victory. And so something might look like it's a third strike to you, but Jesus says, no, I'm going to declare myself out like I did on the cross so that you could have another chance at bat, so that you could keep on going. The game is never done until Jesus says it is. Keep on going. Stand in the batter's box. Keep on striving. Keep on swinging. With Jesus, it is never too late to come back and win the victory.